America is facing an opioid crisis. Today, a very special edition of the Trudy Haynes Show. Hello and welcome to the Trudy Haynes Show. We're very happy to have you today because we're going to be talking about a very important subject with two very outstanding gentlemen, and I would like to welcome them both here today. And I'd like to introduce first Tony Luke, and it's spelled L-U-K-E.
That's correct.
Who you know him as a very important and as a celebrity and as a restaurateur, but you're also going to find out something about him that's quite nice too. And Dr. Lawrence Robinson, who was the Chief of Health during the Street and Rendell administrations, and we're happy to welcome both of you, but I'm going to start off with you, Tony Luke. I'm going to start off with you, Tony, because people have heard your name and they know that you're in the business of the restaurant business, a restaurateur, but I'm just finding out that you were also a musician, or you not were, but you are, and that you've recently written a song. Now let's start with that song. Why?
Well, I recently wrote a song for my son Tony, who had passed from a heroin overdose. But before we released that track, there's a very dark period that you go through and continue to go through. Losing a child is something that's pretty indescribable. It's you die basically, and then what's left is what's left. So we all have choices. So you could choose to die alongside of my son, but then I thought then his death wouldn't have had any meaning. So I decided to focus on the part that I watched my son get devastated the most by, which, believe it or not, wasn't so much the drug, but the stigma destroyed him. It left him with no hope. It left him, people would look at him and talk about him, and they would say things about him. You know, what people don't understand is those that struggle with addiction, they judge themselves every second of every minute of every day. They don't need you to judge them. And then when I hear people in a crowd say, oh, someone died from an overdose, well, they chose to do it. I don't have any sympathy for them. And when I hear that, I don't get mad. I just realize that the world is so uneducated on what addiction is. And I was just speaking to the doctor before we got on the show, and I had said to him, what I try to let people understand is there is a huge difference between someone with a drug problem and someone who suffers from addiction. They are not the same thing. And unfortunately, the recovery system that we have in place is geared towards it's geared more towards someone who has a drug problem, not an addiction, because recovery centers, you go in and you recover, they clean the body. And I don't even like using the word clean because that implies that that person is dirty, and they're not. And let me tell you something, what you think may start as a choice absolutely becomes a disease. This is a disease. And there's mental health issues that are involved with addiction as well.
I'm going to stop you right there if you don't mind, because you're talking about things that you're getting ready to address or have been addressing for some time, doctor. So
it's a disease, just like it was cancer or heart disease. It's a disease. And we know that, like other diseases, some people have a predisposition for developing that disease more than other people. Same thing with the whole issue of addiction. So we have to address it in a different way. I always tell people it's not something that you can police your way out. It's not a criminal justice issue. This is a medical issue. It's a public health crisis that we're going through right now. And we do have, some modalities and some ways that we can address this issue. But it's going to take a different mindset. We need more capacity, more programs, and we have to get to the person when they are ready. You can't delay or wait. When that person, has that overdose, you've got to have a program right there, get them in that program, and motivate them while they're at that point. And one of the things that I'm finding is that we don't have the capacity or the programs that are necessary to manage people.
Who's listening to both of you? You both seemingly are going up the same track. in the same direction. And you're just two people. Who's listening?
Well, everybody's listening now. This is really an epidemic. I just recently came back from a conference that was run by the DEA, the state, the Philadelphia Health Department, and Health and Human Service, which are the feds. And they have some very disturbing statistics. One of the things that I found out that right in Pennsylvania in 2017, there were over 5,700 overdose deaths in the state. Right here in Philadelphia, we've had, in 17, we had over 1,700 deaths. That's 3 times the homicide rate. So 3 times as many people die from overdose than die from homicide.
How did your son get involved?
With my son, it was a little more complicated. I had moved from Philadelphia to Jersey because we have this idea, which is completely wrong, that come out of the city and then there's not as much crime and there's not as much this, which is not true. When I partied as a kid, I did have a drug problem. My drug of choice was meth and amphetamines. And when I was rushed to the hospital, I had done all of these drugs combined. I stopped because I wasn't struggling with addiction. So unfortunately for my son, I would look at him and go, why can't you just stop? I didn't get it. I didn't understand. And I think I added even more pressure to my son because now he feels like, what's wrong with me? If my father's telling me he just stopped, why can't I stop? Because I was uneducated, like most people are. And then when he got involved, he began self-medicating. There were issues. Now, what those issues were with my son, I would be guessing. And I don't want to guess, but I do know that most people suffer from maybe low self-esteem. Some people feel that they don't really have a personality unless they're getting high. And then what happens is, if you're predisposed, and the drugs they're using today is, once, I say this with people, it may be a choice to start, but once you're involved, literally the brain gets rewired. It completely gets rewired, and then it literally becomes a disease. I heard someone say something once, and I really want to repeat it, because I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Someone said, it's a choice, not a disease. And this person was speaking, and he said, okay, let's follow your line of thinking. When someone gets lung cancer, you have sympathy for them. You have programs for them. How come no one says, well, you decided to smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day? That was your choice. Why should we help you? Why should we put programs in place? All things start from somewhere, and people are predisposed. The lane that I'm in, which is different from the doctors, is my lane is to get people in this country to understand that it is a disease, to get people in this country to know and show empathy for people that are struggling. Because what I do know is laws are not going to change, insurance companies are not going to change, unless the consensus in this country is that this is a disease.
What is this addiction? Where does it come from? I mean, what's in what you smoke or take? Or
It's actually a multifactorial. There's lots of different conditions. What we're dealing with is what they call the opioid crisis. And there are many reasons why people get started on opiates. It's a medication that's used for pain relief. And some people may even have it prescribed to them by the doctor. Then once they get to a certain level, the doctor says, oh no, you're taking too much of this. I can't prescribe it anymore. Well, it's too late for the person at that point. They're already addicted to it. You have these opioid receptors, mu receptors. You have these actual receptors in the body. So this is a substance that the body has a place for.
so what's the opiate thing going to attach to?
It works on the dopamine system. So that's the system that gives you pleasure. It gives you relief from pain. There's actually a part of your body which is actually seeks this medication. That's why you become addicted to it. So once you attach to these receptors, the body has to have them. You actually will go into withdrawal symptoms if you don't continue to take the medication. So they don't have any choice. I mean, very severe symptoms if they don't continue to take it.
Why now? Why is it a crisis now?
Yeah.
This has been going on for, at
just
least
talked
I'd
about
say.
that.
Yeah, lots of things going on. Okay, one thing is the drug. There's a big change in the drug that's available now. Most of the deaths that are occurring here in Philadelphia, in the state and around the country, are caused by a substance called fentanyl. Fentanyl is a synthetic opiate. It's 100 times stronger than your regular, opiate. So it's a very powerful drug. It's made, it's not grown from a poppy. This is manufactured in a laboratory. So it's much cheaper to make, and it's easier, to transport it because the quantity is so small, like just a little grain of it, you can actually overdose on. And they are mixing this along with other chemicals, and the people are taking it. It's even in pills now. So I've seen cases where they actually have fake pills that look like regular Percocets or OxyContin pills, pressed with the number and everything on them, but they're not. They are made with these drugs contained in them.
Okay, I give up. What do we do? How can we stop it?
You have to change the mindset of people. You have to, the way the recovery system works now is not geared towards those with addiction. There needs to be therapy. It's a coping
but you're
mechanism.
dealing with it after the person is on it. What
Right.
do you do to stop, to not get on it?
Well, we said this outside. There's a lot of things different now than before when I was a child. The way we raise children is different now. I can't go anywhere without kids feeling completely and utterly entitled. As parents, we give them everything. They don't have to work for nothing. And we tell them, we literally bring them up as kids from what I'm seeing, that the world is beautiful and that we're this and we're that and everything's great. Then they get into the real world and it's nothing like that. We are giving these kids no coping mechanisms whatsoever to handle life. Then when life hits them, they panic and they don't know what to do. So they want to escape from it. And remember, when the body is affected, like the doctor had said, the mind is affected as well. So when they go to rehab and they come out and maybe the receptors in their body are no longer craving the drug, but their mind is completely rewired. When they talk about people relapsing is not just doing the drug. Relapsing is a state of mind. Someone in recovery can relapse even before they start using again. It's that mindset. It's that addict mindset of, I can't handle this. I don't want to do it. I want to go here. This ain't going to work. I'm not worth anything. Nobody loves, I can't be loved. I can't. It's that mindset. They need therapy. We need to put people suffering from addiction need to be put into rehab. They need to be recovered. They need follow-up care. They need to speak to therapists. They have to figure a way to cope with whatever it is they can't cope with other than using the drug.
This is how I look at it, because, you have to be an optimist, So I think that there is a way that we can approach, this issue, okay? So I'm looking at it from the standpoint of it being a mental illness. So I get people that come to me all the time, for treatment. I have a clinic and I treat people. So the first thing that I tell the person is, I said, listen, you've got something going on there that made you use that drug. I said, you didn't just go and get that drug and start using it because it didn't make any sense for you to do it. I said, you've got something going on underneath this. And until you deal with those issues that you have, you're never going to beat this problem. And then I start exploring some of the conditions that they have which lead them to use the drug. One of the biggest things is depression. I find a lot of people have levels of depression. And it expresses itself in all of the ways that he just said. Their inability to cope, inability to control their mood,
How old was
feeling
your son
hopeless.
when this happened to him?
He was 35 when he died.
Now he's a grown man at that
And
point.
he had two beautiful little girls who he loved. And let me tell you something. I'll say it right in front of the camera. He was a better father to his girls than I ever was. A dad. He was amazing. There was no you would look at that and go, well, I don't understand. But like he said,
There's something underneath
they're
there.
underlying.
Yes.
And
Well, where do you start with that? Where do you find it?
Well, the first thing is you have to diagnose what the issues are. And see, it's complex. It's not a simple thing. I mean, there's depression, there's post-traumatic stress disorder, there's schizophrenia. A lot of people have a short-circuit wiring in their brain. A lot of people don't realize it. Schizophrenia is a very common disorder. 1 out of every 100 people suffer from schizophrenia. A lot of people have mental illness. It's a very common condition.
Well, now
we
you-
don't like to talk about it.
All right, but mental illness is coming to the front now.
Yes, it is.
a lot of it is, yeah. But the one thing that I do, the one area I work is I volunteer to speak at schools as much as I can. Because I think one of the biggest issues that kids face today that we never did was social media.
Yeah.
Because when we were kids, if someone in your neighborhood didn't like you, there was a problem. Now these kids go on Instagram, a girl puts a dress on her, she has an outfit, and says, hey, I'm going out with my mom, or I'm going out tonight. And then someone she doesn't even know comes on and makes fun of her, or says she looks ugly, or she's not wearing it right. They're always under the gun. And then I speak to parents and I say to them, listen to me, I don't care what your job is. Nothing is more important than spending time with your children, speaking to them. These kids can't have a conversation and interact with each other without texting each other. I mean, it's ridiculous. And we as parents contribute to that because we tell them, go on the computer, we can't be bothered. Don't you have something to do on social media? Go on Facebook, we can't be bothered. We're too busy. And our children are being raised on social media. And then you want to know why so many kids are suffering from depression and low self-esteem. It's right there, yet we do nothing to fix that.
Okay, gentlemen, both of you have described the issue, and some things you've said might be things that we should look at to curtail this issue. You are, in the meantime, Doctor, interested in not growing, but giving
Yeah,
shots.
Well,
I'm kind of scared what I'm going to say here because
I'm a medical doctor, so one of the things that I'm also dealing with, I'm dealing with cancer. Cancer is another area that I deal with.
Okay.
I'm the chairman of the National Black Leadership Initiative on Cancer. I have a nonprofit organization.
And of course, these prescriptions of drugs are good for cancer, and you feel marijuana is good for cancer, and you really have auditioned for this.
Yeah, well, all of the drugs are used in cancer. Even the opiates are used in cancer for pain relief. They're often prescribed. But what we're thinking now is that marijuana might be an alternative to using the opiates for pain relief. So marijuana is an alternative now that's being used for pain relief. And so we use marijuana in lieu of opiates for pain relief. We also use the marijuana for people who are losing weight. So one of the things that they have when people get cancer, they get what's called cachexia, and they lose weight and get drawn. The marijuana stimulates their appetite, and it causes them to eat more calories, and it's good for stabilizing their weight.
So you approve of medical use of marijuana for medical use?
There's lots of good uses for it, and people have actually proposed medical marijuana as one of the alternatives to the use of opiates, because we really think that the opiates are really overprescribed. They're using too much of them, and so we're going to have to look for other alternative.
And the
drugs.
opiates are what? What other medicines? You use marijuana for the medical. Now, what are the opiates?
Yes, yeah. Well, opiates are made from the poppy seed, so they are heroin, Percocets, oxycodone. All of those are opiates. You have synthetics.
So why would somebody
fentanyl.
give another human being, those?
Well, they have their uses now. They use them for pain relief. They are effective for pain relief. And so, like if a person has arthritis, or they have a bad back, or they have a bad knee, You know, many times doctors will prescribe opiates for the treatment for the pain that's associated with those conditions.
Oh.
If I can interrupt 1 second, I want to touch on something he said. I was speaking at an event once with a doctor, and he brought up a very, very good point. He said, prior, I may be getting the decade wrong, so don't quote me on the decade, but I could have sworn he said prior to the 80s, pharmaceutical companies had a directive. Their directive was that if someone had a pain level of 10, that they were to develop medication to get that pain level from a 10 to like a 4. And that's the medication they made and they prescribed. He said, but then all of a sudden people were coming in saying, well, I don't want to manage pain. I want the pain to go from a 10
Right.
to a 0. So then the pharmaceutical companies start creating these opioids that were so strong that you have no pain. You go from a 10 to a 0. But again, it goes back to the question you asked. What is the difference? It's people's mentality anymore today. When I was a kid, I got hurt. The doctor said, here's 3 Flexerils for your back. What do I do after that? You take aspirins and you deal with the pain,
Right.
and you move on. No one wants to deal with pain. No one wants to deal with hurt. No one wants to deal with disappointment. No one wants to deal. And we're not changing. We're not doing anything to change that. And that's why you've got, when you looked, you said, why do we have all these? Oh, because patients were coming in saying, I don't want to deal with a 4-level pain.
That's right.
I want no pain. So doctors go back and say, we need stronger medication because people don't want to deal with the pain. That's why you're getting the medication that you're getting now. And this was the end result. And that's exactly
and now
what's
we
going
have
to
a
happen.
crisis.
Yeah. And you know, it's an interesting point because pain is actually a part of life.
Yeah.
You know, and you actually need pain in order of, you know, when you have pain, that's the body telling you that you need to do something. You know what I'm saying? So you don't really want to get rid of all of the pain. There's a purpose for
we
pain.
do need stronger laws.
Well, we need a new concept on how we deal with things,
Right. We need to
and that's
think
what he's
different.
saying. You know, I mean, it's not reasonable, and I agree with him to say that you'll live a life without pain. That's not reasonable. You know, I mean, even myself, I have back problems. I had herniated disc in my back. Okay, so when I went to the doctor, the first thing they wanted to do was they wanted to give me injections into the back and all of that stuff. And so I asked the doctor. I said, "Well, is that going to cure it?" He said, "No." And so what he said is, it'll work for a while, but then we'll have to come back and do another one. And so what happens is every time you use the drug, the time and relief gets shorter, and then you have to go back for another shot, and it lasts for less time, and it gives you less relief. Until finally you're in a position where you're dependent on that drug even to move or to walk.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm not going to start down that road. You understand what I'm saying? Because I knew that it was a road that was not going to end in a good outcome. So what I said is, I'm going to go and do exercises. I'm going to do yoga. I'm going to do stuff to try to build up my back. And I said, as long as I can still walk, I'm not going to do that. You understand what I'm saying?
But that's what you were pointing out of me. That's why people say that person made a choice. What he's talking about now, you have to decide yourself that you can put up with a little pain,
Right,
or an alternative for treating that pain.
No, I don't fight with people that say, well, you know, it starts out as a choice. But everything in life starts out as a choice. I'm 85 pounds overweight. When my son died, I put 85 pounds on in 15 months because the way I cope with depression is eating. That's what I do. So now if tomorrow I get a heart attack, wasn't it a choice for me to put the food in my mouth? Everything in life's a choice. But it gets to a point with opioid addiction where it no longer becomes a choice. You don't have a choice. You have a full-blown disease, and we have to treat it as such. And that is fixing the body, and it is fixing the mind, and it's therapy. And I'm not talking about therapy for a month. I'm talking about long-term therapy. And here's the other biggest issue that if we got a minute, I want it, because this is what I'm working on as well. We literally set up people in recovery to fail. And here's what I mean by that. They go into recovery, they come out, Some of them have felonies, okay? Can't drive. No one will hire them. They won't give them a job. They do a background check. They won't go near them. So we do all this, and then we say, okay, well, here we go. You're supposedly in recovery now, and they push them out the door, and what do you think they're going to do? They're in the street. They have no place to live. They have the money in their pockets. So I have been working, and Rastelli Food Groups, which is a big company, were the first one to come on board. I've been working with a woman named Laura Morris, who does the hiring and does human resources. And we are putting together a program that I'm bringing to all businesses where I don't want to call it a second chance program. It's not. I call it a futures program, where we give people that have a year in recovery, that are because you need a year to get your life together. That's why they tell you not even have a relationship in a year in recovery. A year in recovery, you come, you got a job. We're not going to turn you away because you have a record. They're not going to turn you away because you're in recovery. And then we're starting an entrepreneurship program where those in recovery that are entrepreneurs that want their own business, we're going to show them how to do it. We're going to help them get loans from the banks. We're going to talk to the government about subsidizing that to give people a future, because without it, there's no hope. You're falling into the same cycle over and over again.
Where can they get in touch with you? Anyone listening would say, gee, I need that, or I want to help.
Well, they can always get a hold of me on any of my social media pages at Tony Luke Jr. Also, our email address is brownandwhiteusa@gmail.com. And all of that is incorporated. Brown and White is a social media initiative. We don't collect any money, but we try to bring all information together. So we ask people that are watching, if you have a foundation, I don't care what if it's medical, if it's social foundation, we ask you to hashtag Brown and White, so that when people need information, if they put that hashtag in, it connects all of the foundations and all of the information in one place, like a Google, say, for those that has to do everything that has to do with addiction. And we don't make any money. We don't take any money. I don't take no salary. I don't even take expenses. Nothing. Everything that we do, we don't take any money for. We just want to bring people together and change the stigma.
Now, you have some music coming out. Everyone may not know that you're a full-fledged musician, but you've written a song and you have some video with it. What's happening with it?
Yes, I actually redid an old Bob Dylan song called Make You Feel My Love, which really encompasses what it feels like when you're struggling with addiction, when as a family member watching someone you love struggling. So I recorded it, I put it up on iTunes. It's under Tony Luke Jr., and all the proceeds from that song goes towards the hashtag Brown and White initiative. And then we shot a music video, which we're releasing the second week in August, which kind of shows that these are real people, that this affects real people, that people struggling with addiction are not numbers and they are not statistics. So look out for that. It'll be on YouTube and Facebook. Here. I appreciate that. And if you go download the song from iTunes or Spotify, Amazon, they all have it. All those proceeds go towards helping end the stigma.
That's great. Someone may need some information more about the medical side.
Yes, well, what we have now and what I'm doing is called medical assistant therapy. So we have several medications which people can take in lieu of the opiates, okay? There's the old-time medicine, which was methadone, and they still do have methadone clinics. I'm not a proponent of methadone. I'm using a medication which is called buprenorphine or Suboxone. This is a medication that has the properties of an agonist and an antagonist. So it's actually an opiate and a blocker in the same medication.
Okay, where can they get in touch with you?
So, well, there is a website. Okay. There are two ways. There's a website called Treatment Match, and the government, SAMHSA, has a website where they can put their zip code in and find a doctor for medically assisted therapy for opiates.
You both have been wonderful. I want to thank you for being a part of the Trudy Haynes Show, and you too. Have a blessed day.